Thanks for coming on to the podcast today. How's everything going down your way?
Yeah, good day, Jack. All's going well, mate. We've had a good start to the year with some rain and mild summer, so yeah, pretty lucky this year versus some of the other recent years.
Absolutely. It's always good when you get off to a good start, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes it a bit easier.
Absolutely. So before we get into agribusiness, just tell us a bit about yourself and your background of agriculture.
Yeah, sure. I've been in agriculture one way or the other for all of my career, and grew up on properties, mixed farming between Warwick and Inglewood, and then my father had another place between Torwood and Mungandai. We had sheep and cattle and a little bit of cropping. Went to uni, did ag science, and I started a business called Agricultural Management Company when I left uni, and sort of that offered management services to people who owned properties but didn't want to run them themselves. And sort of the journey of that business sort of went to different places where we probably didn't expect it to go. So most of our clients were Indigenous owned organisations. There was a couple of overseas companies that owned properties here in Australia, but most of them were sort of private people based in the city. And then also the bigger professional service firms, and did a lot of work with sort of mining companies and things like that owned a lot of properties and weren't necessarily managing the operations themselves. So did that for probably, I don't know, about 12 years in the end. And then before going back to working on properties ourselves, more so than out of, a management service type company. So yeah, we moved out to Warren, to my wife's family's place, Haddon Rig, and we're out there for a couple of years. And yeah, then we decided to look at. Had been looking for something for ourselves for a while, but sort of couldn't find anything, and then eventually found a property down at Canandra, which is where we're at today.
How long did it take you until you found the one property, that is?
We were pretty lucky. It was only the second place we looked at. So we had been looking for a while, in terms of sort of searching on different areas we liked, or, trying to refine what the criteria were for us to buy a property that sort of suited all aspects, from what I thought about the agricultural side of things and what we could do with the land and the water, but then also, my wife Eleanor works full time, so what are the opportunities for her in those areas? Is there access to airports and all that sort of stuff close to where we're going to be, and can she get out when she needs to go to work and all that sort of thing? So we probably put more of the time into refining what we wanted from the property, and that helped, because the first place we looked at, we knew pretty well straight away that it wasn't going to work. And then the second place we found, we were like, yeah, this ticks all the boxes, and as long as we can get it for a price that we're comfortable with, we'll go with it.
Absolutely. And how long have you been down there for now?
Nearly 2 years.
So quite recent.
The first year we were there was, the first year we were there was a bit rough. But we'd learned we learned a few lessons, sort of drought management while we were at Warren, and then came down to Canandra, and all the guys who were in their sort of late 70s and 80s in the area were saying it's the worst they've ever seen it. But when you'd come in from Warren, it looked pretty good. And there was a lot more options, and a bit more flexibility and forgiveness there than a bit further out west. So and then it started raining this time last year. So last year was good to get that under the belt. Meant we actually had a harvest, and all the stock were doing well. And the interesting thing of the recovery of this drought versus any others that I've seen is that the prices are there to match. So anything you can produce is worth good money.
Absolutely. And it's mixed farming down there. You got a bit of cropping.
Yeah, it is. We've got livestock, so we run mainly merinos. Half of them are joined to a terminal sire, the rest of them are joined to pole merinos for self-replacing flock. Then the rest is dual-purpose cropping. So all of the dryland cropping that we do has a grazing element to it as well. So we grow grazing canolas, grazing wheat, and then we grow barley for a feedlot that we built there as well. So we've got a 4,000 head land feedlot there. So we try and grow as much of the inputs for that as we can on that place. We've also got some centre pivots for irrigated fodder production, so much of that's for lucerne, and then lucerne flats along the Lobular River, which is sort of for the equine industry mostly. So yeah, we try to have a couple of different enterprises there, like for the drought, the lucerne flats and the irrigated lucerne, we got the best prices we've ever seen, and that's what paid the first year's interest, because there was nothing else happening on the place. Like, we had livestock, but we were feeding them, and the feedlot was going flat out. But we didn't get a crop, and so it was the hay during a drought, really kept us going. And I guess when we were looking for the property to purchase, we wanted as much as possible the diversification, but some sort of certainty around our production. So this particular property has irrigation water from a river, which wasn't available during the drought, but it had some irrigation bores, which we had a little bit of water from. And then along the river, it was a bit of a unique setup where you got self-watering flats where the lucerne gets its feet down into the water table. So even during the drought, we've sort of got 6 cuts of lucerne there. So, you go 100 metres up the hill and you've got a failing wheat crop, and then down on the river flats, the river's dry, but the lucerne's still got its feet down in the water table. So that's what sort of sold us on that particular property.
It sounds like great to be able to create your own feed and not having to rely to buy in. Did you have to buy in at all to supplement your own feed, or no?
Yeah, we had to buy barley, and we use a buffer pellet, which sort of helps with preventing acidosis and has a few minerals and things like that in it. But the first year we didn't produce any barley, but this year we've put away as much as possible on farm, so that we hopefully won't have to buy any for some time. But any of the hay and the straw that we might be using in the feedlot and everything, we can produce all that ourselves. So it has to be, if it's in the middle of a drought, we'll be buying some barley, but generally we can produce what we need.
Yeah, that's great. So for the listeners, when you're looking to buy a piece of land, what 3 factors are you looking for? Infrastructure, water, or?
Yeah, the infrastructure you can build. I don't get too caught up on the infrastructure. It's actually, the place that we bought had good infrastructure, but that wasn't on our list. Like, we built the feedlot, we've built workshops, we're sort of rebuilding yards and loading facilities and all that sort of stuff. So the infrastructure is a factor, but it's not a deciding factor for us. For me, it's all about the water. And there's probably a couple of different factors within the water, which sort of, what type of water resources have you got? Have you got different options? So this place, for example, had the river, had irrigation bores, it had stock and domestic bores, and it also has the groundwater in terms of dams. So you've got a few different options there. That, to me, is the be all and end all of farming. If you've got options with water, you can either grow stuff or you can water livestock. Then the rest of it, you can sort of fill in the gaps. So secondary to the water was the soil and the sort of the ground, natural resources. So what you can use that water on and how you might be able to use that water. So could you develop centre pivot irrigation? Are there flood irrigation opportunities? Is there drip irrigation opportunities? What can you physically grow with that water? So around this property, when we drove around, on one boundary there's a vineyard, there's a bloke who grows vegetables. On the other side there's a dairy at the back of us, and there's all sorts of different types of enterprises around our place. So we thought that down down the road, if we can secure the water now, down the road, if we want to diversify and get into other things and start growing bloody zucchinis or cucumbers or something, when we can do that. So we've got the land, we've got the water resources, then you can change tack in the future. If if the land market doesn't keep going in the way it's going at the moment, then you can do something else if you want to.
Yep. Well, the two main things we need is soil and water, and just making sure you got those 2 points ticked off when buying a property.
Yeah. I think the proximity to markets is important as well. For where we are at Canandra, we've got a lot of sale markets around us for selling fat lambs, but also for buying store lambs. You're sort of right in the middle of where a lot of lambs are produced, so you can generally get lambs to the property or into the feedlot or to market pretty efficiently. And then, you can source grain if you need to source grain. It's a pretty good spot for us to be freighting hay out as well into the equine industries down to, into the Hunter Valley or down into Sydney. And we've sent a lot up to that Darling Downs over the last couple of years to all the feedlots and that sort of stuff. But so yeah, proximity is good. And then, the secondary factor to that is that we've got a range of airports around us. So you can fly out of Orange, you can fly out of Parkes, you can fly out of Dubbo, and from those three places you can get pretty well anywhere. So the work opportunities and the off-farm opportunities are pretty good from that sort of area. Like some of the places we've been in the past, you haven't had that. Yep. So your off-farm work opportunities, or if a partner doesn't want to work on farm, they don't have the same opportunity. So at the moment, I guess you've got all the work from home perks where a lot of people are working from home and still got the same benefits. But before that was the case, and potentially again in the future, you still need to be able to travel and get to offices or get to a site or something like that. And I think people can earn a lot of money being regionally based and work on some of the big projects out there, but your living costs are a lot lower. So that's sort of attractive. So my wife Eleanor, she wanted to be able to still travel and for her work and all the rest. So that played a big part in where we were going to be based.
Yeah, definitely. It does when you're looking, especially when you're looking for a place with a partner, going into regional places where they can dart in and out, work on farm or off farm as well. Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lifestyle aspect to that. I mean, you can actually go away to somewhere on the holidays, and it's pretty easy. If you want to jump on a plane and go somewhere, it's easy, and you don't have to drive for 3 days or something.
Yeah, good stuff. Now, a question I wanted to ask you when I was seeking to talk about property to someone was leasing land over buying it. You said earlier you're just leasing the block now, even though it's not for sale. What's your decision making on, you say you have 3,000 acres you want to buy, or that's for sale, or you could lease it? What would you do, and how would you approach it?
We sort of look at what capital resources have we got to expand to start with. So you effectively have a budget to work with. So then you've got to look at what you can do with that money and how much scale you can get with that money. So if we were going to try and purchase something near us, and I believe when you're going to lease something to start with, it should be within sort of an hour and a half of where you're at. Otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of your time traveling and not actually running business. So it needs to be close by, and then you've got a chance at also sharing some of your resources, whether that be labour or gear or all that sort of stuff. So within that sort of area, within that radius of where we live now, the buying opportunities are pretty limited. There's a lot of small properties, a few hundred acres here and there. And then the bigger ones, we've got a lot of competition from some pretty big corporates around us. So, Macquarie Bank are out just over the back of us, the Viridis. So they're buying properties in the order of sort of 1,500 acres even. So, that puts a lot of competition in the market for that sort of thing. So, and MH Premium Farms and a few others in our sort of zone. So when you want to go and buy those type of size properties, it's pretty difficult as a private operator to compete against those guys. So you either chip away buying little properties and do it over a period of time, or you try and look for a bit of scale. And I'm sort of more on more on the side of scale. I think when we're looking to expand. So when we went to put some money to work, we figured that leasing, we can actually get a lot more scale through leasing than what we can through purchasing. So you add the enterprises together, and we look at it on a basis of return on capital and return on assets managed. So we have our core assets, but by adding some other scale to it with a little bit of capital, our return is improved by doing so. So we've got there's another 3,200 acres over towards Bathurst that we're starting up next week, and we'll be running sheep over there, and it's dual purpose cropping as well, and a little bit of hay. And when we're looking for properties, same criteria, exactly the same as our home business. So that one's got a couple of river systems running through it, so it's got some irrigation opportunities there. And then I guess once you decide whether leasing or purchasing is right for you, whether you're buying something or you're leasing something, you've got to negotiate. So I think the most important thing is working out what the other party want and what they're thinking, and what the outcomes are that they need. And then you can try and pitch to that outcome. So if you're buying something, I think a lot of people are always focused on what they want, but the only way you're ever going to convince someone to sell it is if you really give them what they want. And it's a lot of the time, it's got a dollar sign on it, but then there might be a number of other things. So it's what you're going to do with the property you're purchasing from them, or what you're going to do with the property that you're leasing, how you're going to look after it. Like this, the family that we're leasing the property off, they want to be able to come and still enjoy the property. So they'll come out, they don't live on the property, but they want to still come out and enjoy it. We know them. So there's a little bit of an aspect of they want to come and see that, the place is operating well and all the rest, but they want to go down to the river fishing if they want to and do all that. So that was quite an important part for them to be able to enjoy the place that they own. And to us, we don't mind that sort of thing is fine. There was a range of development activities that they wanted to undertake, which is actually how we originally got to look at that lease. So I got a call from that family asking if I could go and have a look at the property and see what the opportunities are for them to develop it further, and sort of increase the productive capacity of it and make better use of their water resources and all the rest. So we went and had a look, and at the end of that discussion, they said, would you be interested in leasing it and doing the development work? So they're going to pay for the capital expenditure work, and as part of our sort of component for leasing, we'll do the groundwork in actually sort of putting it all together and getting it underway, so that when we get to the end of the lease, the property is fully developed and they can then do what they want with it. They can either take it on and operate it again themselves, or they can sell it, or whatever they decide to do down the track. And then for us at that stage, then we'll probably make that decision again. If we built up enough steam in our business to go and buy something, or do we continue to lease? So that's sort of how we approach it all.
When you're looking for lease, like what sort of time frame do you want as a minimum?
Yeah, this particular lease is 3 + 3 + 3. So we've got the initial 3-year term, and then another 3-year option and another 3-year option. So it's sort of the initial 3 years is probably a little bit short in my thinking, but in this particular case, the most likely scenario is probably 6 years, and then potential for 9. Other leases that I've been involved with in the past with more corporate type owners like Westchester and stuff like that, generally we're going for 5 or 7 years, particularly with farming, because in the more western areas, you're not, if you just look at a 3-year period, well, we just had a drought that was 4/5 years, so you need to have a pretty long outlook on leasing just straight dryland farming country, particularly if you're going to be west of the Newell Highway, so on the east coast. But if you've got a mixed farming block and you're leasing, then you can look at slightly shorter timeframes.
Yeah, it's whatever you want to sort of negotiate with the landowner, isn't it? And what works for both of the parties.
Yeah, and it depends on your enterprise too.
Yeah.
and what you can absorb. Like, can you absorb a bad year in your first year with your existing operations and all that sort of stuff. So, and if it does turn bad, is it going to be bad across all of the properties that you've got, whether it's your home block plus the lease place or, you know, all the rest? So we're hoping that there's not much, you know, distance from A to B between us and this new block, but there's a big difference in elevation. It's a completely different sort of rainfall pattern, localized climate. It's different river systems. So what happens up there on the Campbells, the Fish and the Macquarie River is very different than what happens on the Belubula, where we are, and sort of that Lachlan Valley system. So we're hoping that, you know, if it's bad in one area, it's not going to be bad in the other, or it might be slightly different and you have a different growing opportunity, or, you know, sowing rain or whatever it's going to be.
Definitely. So one thing that's like hard or costly can be transferring in between places, moving around. How do you navigate working on your lease blocks and then your home block as well?
Yeah, so we've got full-time staff at home,
Yeah.
and we'll be putting on full-time people over at the lease block as well. So this is where the question of scale comes into it as well. I think if you're relying on yourself to go and start covering sort of both, you know, if you're taking on a new property, and you've got to scale up your resources as well. So when you're going to look at, you know, buying or leasing a place, if it's going to be just too much for you and you're going to spend all your time traveling in between the two blocks and floating gear in between the properties, you know, I don't know if it's going to be as efficient as what people probably think it might be on paper. They don't factor in the time and the cost to be shifting gear around. But if you can get the scale where you can have more full-time employment there, you're not going to be the one driving the truck in between the two properties all the time. You can actually start running your business a bit more effectively. So for me, you know, like I enjoy being on the tools, but then I won't be able to do as much of that going forward, because if you start, you know, straining up too many fences yourself, the whole show will fall apart. So yeah, you know, I'll be spending more time going between the two properties, but you need to make sure that you've got really good people working in the business that, you know, like our guys at home, they know exactly what's going on, and they know the yearly program, and they know what's expected. And, you know, week to week, you're sort of just adjusting plans. You're not really giving them, you know, too much helicopter management, I suppose. They really know what's going on. So that's, if you can get that set up, then, you know, when those expansion opportunities come, you can either hire someone internally, or you can, you know, bring someone into the team and they can see that there's a functioning team. There's opportunities for bringing people on then that they might have, you know, career opportunities within your business, which is quite often a challenge for families. Like when you go and hire a young person, they're looking to learn and, you know, get promotions and pay upgrades and all the rest. But in a family business, quite often there's a bit of a ceiling there of how far they can go. So if you can offer those opportunities, you know, in lease country or expansion opportunities, then it sort of helps out in other parts of the business.
Well, it opens you up to be more attractive, doesn't it? You've got a few different things on your plate, so it can be attractive for those coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you go about employing for your home block or your lease blocks?
Yeah, it's not that easy. We were pretty lucky with our home block when we first started out. We borrowed a couple of people from out at Warren and came down and during the sort of the building phase at the start. So that was good. We sort of got to steal a couple of handy people from Haddenreg at the start. So we went down and built all the main infrastructure that we wanted to build. So that was an intensive sort of 3 months where we just banged out all the stuff we needed to do. And then when we started looking for full-time people, like we were just talking about, if you can start to tick off a few of the different boxes around pay, their lifestyle opportunities, their work opportunities for the partners, you know, what's the area like? Is it a nice place to work? Is it a nice place to live? You know, all the rest. Then it's not that hard to get people. So I've noticed a big difference in, say, attracting talent down where we are now, Canowindra, versus being further west, because not everybody wants to live in the west. Like, it's got a lot of advantages, and I really love it. But attracting staff can be a little bit harder because some people don't want to live, out in the middle of nowhere. So we're a bit lucky in that regard that, we're very close to all sorts of different areas, like Orange, for example, the lifestyle opportunities around there that people on the weekends, they go off and do, all sorts of stuff. And being able to offer that is a pretty big deal. And then all the people that we've actually ever interviewed for roles, whether they've taken the role or not, their partners are asking as many questions about the area, what schools are around, what are the lifestyle opportunities, what are the work opportunities, what are all the different towns like, what sort of, stuff's around. So that's, it's becoming less and less about what one of the partners wants as a farm role. It's more about what sort of general package and offering you can sort of give them to really get them there. Because we still can't compete on wages versus, the construction and engineering firms. Like with all the big infrastructure projects that are going on in regional Australia at the moment, I think there's a big push for staff going into those projects, and agriculture can't offer the same money. We can offer better money than what I think a lot of people pay the people, but we can offer a lot more other than just dollars. So you need to factor in training. You need to pay for on-farm training, but also courses and schools and all that sort of stuff, and make sure that your staff are getting off farm and going and learning things that they can bring home. Or they might not necessarily use it too much when they're at your home block. They might use it further on in their career too. So, but that's what keeps people going. If they're idle hands and idle minds cause trouble, and that's my view. So if they're busy on farm but their brains aren't working, then you've got to try and either do that through training or give them something, give them some more responsibility or something like that, and get them moving.
That's it. Keep them motivated for sure.
Mm.
Well, Charlie, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I got some value out of that, so the listeners will too, for sure. For the podcast, question I ask everyone is, who else would you like to hear on the Farms Advice podcast, and why?
That's a good question. Probably
Padden Rig.
That's a good plug, mate. Yeah, you could jag someone from there. I don't know. There's a couple of guys. I think somebody from who's sort of made the step either from corporate ag back to family farming or something like that. Like, I think a lot of young people are thinking about going home and how do they make that transition. And there are probably some people that are, at the top end of your listeners' age bracket that have probably done that in the last 5 or 10 years, and stepped out of corporate roles and sort of gone into family business. That's always interesting, or succession type issues.
Yeah, that'd be a great one. The average age for people returning back to family farms is actually 27, and it's right on the mark of what I've done as well. So
there you go.
Fun fact.
Yeah, right.
Well,
fun fact. There you go.
Thanks again, Charlie. How can people contact you? Or just reach out? Twitter? Twitter's a good one for you. You love Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter's a good one. AMC Dirt Dollars. So I use Twitter a bit, or Instagram or whatever. Generally pretty contactable. So if anyone has any questions or whatever, it's pretty easy to get hold of me.
Perfect. We'll chuck your handle into the show notes. That'd be great, and you can catch Charlie there.
No worries. Thanks, Jack.
Cheers, mate. Talk soon.
See you.